All right, man. Peace. I caught a good little feature on the morning news in regards to the so-called American Revolution. So let's see how they let's see how they discuss this issue.
How did we know that this plan would work? We had a spy on the inside. That's right.
A battle-used saber, a piece of Maryland's Liberty Tree, the first newspaper publication of the Declaration of Independence, and even a pair of baby shoes made from the red coat of a defeated British soldier. Those are just some of the items on display at the Museum of the American Revolution, opening this week in Philadelphia, just steps away from the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall. This month, workers put the finishing touches on the Museum of the American Revolution. It took them 8 hours to hang this painting of George Washington at the end of the war. And it's taken them more than a decade to get to this point.
Well, if you come down here...
In 2012, collection director Scott Stevenson gave me a preview of some of the items that will go on display.
See, remember, I stated in the video that I did about the ancient Egyptians, that was also on CBS. I stated that these people. When I say these people, I mean the elite so-called Caucasians, or the ones that are privy to a lot of historical information and historical data. They have tens of millions of artifacts that they hide in or under museums in the basements, right, or in certain warehouses. Most of the things that you see on the showroom floor are fictitious, right? They're put there to promote a narrative about history.
This is a British musket?
A musket used in the Battle of Lexington and Concord, the first action in the War of Independence.
It would have had a...
No, the first actual action in the War of so-called Independence was when these so-called founding fathers got together and they decided that they were going to have all the 13 colonies become Confederate. All right. Now, in 1717, I believe it was, you have four very small Masonic lodges that combined together to form the Grand Lodge of Great Britain. All right. Then you had the Masonic Lodge of Philadelphia that was formed, I believe, in 1731. Now, Benjamin Franklin joined the lodge in 1732. All right. Now, when the American Masonic lodges finally, got strong enough, they asked for a leader, a representative from the British Lodge. They appointed somebody named Daniel Cox in America. Now, Daniel Cox, he was the first man to really promote the 13 colonies coming together. Okay. So now after that, later on, the colonies, they started to do pretty well for themselves because they had their own money. Like I said before, when you want to understand these so-called revolutions, you always check for the money. All revolutions are caused due to money issues. You understand? So-called natural resource issues. Every last one. They're either caused because one or two parties are competing for control of natural resources, or a third party from outside of that region wants control of the natural resources, so they empower one of the two parties, or they empower a foreign party to infiltrate and cause confusion. All right, but we'll get caught up on that. Let's see what this guy's talking about.
Would have had a strap.
A soldier's canteen, one of only 3 known to have survived.
You can see...
This is U states.
U states. If you think about it, at this point, the United States is still just an idea.
Right. For years, the 3,000 items in this collection have been looking for a permanent home. They'll finally have one. Amazingly, it'll be the first national museum to tell the entire story of the American Revolution.
They're not going to tell a damn thing. They're going to tell it. They're going to give you a narrative. Let's see what this old Caucasian man's talking about.
It's been a long time coming, but I'm glad it's here.
Brown University professor Gordon Wood is a scholar.
Brown University, an Ivy League institution. All right. You must understand what that term means. Ivy League. That term is is according to the worship of the god Bacchus, B as in boy, Accus. All right. That is why when you graduate from a university, you get what's called a baccalaureate. You understand? That means that you have gained the mastery of the mysteries of Bacchus. All right. That is the god of he's also, like I said before, like I've said repeatedly, he is a hermaphrodite. That is the god of this society, Bacchus. All right. Once again, the Bacchanal. He was also known as Saturn, the hidden god. He was also known as Osiris. But his the flower, or pardon me, the plant that represented him was the ivy. All right. That's where you get the term Ivy League from. Okay, baccalaureate, the ivy plant. Right. When you graduate, you get your bachelor's. Right. The term bachelor comes from Bacchus. That's why when you're a bachelor, what do? You sleep with a bunch of people. You engage in orgies. You engage in revelry. The god Bacchus was the god of revelry. So anyway, this guy, he's going to give you a company line about the American Revolution.
Of the revolution.
There have been museums for almost every conceivable event in American history or person in American history, but not for the American Revolution, which is extraordinary when you think of the Revolution as the most important event in our history.
The museum's collection
Another contrived event.
will include this letter, written in Washington's own hand, celebrating the French joining the cause.
Reason why the French joined the cause was because Benjamin Franklin, like I said, who was the head of the Masonic Lodge in Philadelphia, he went over to France to get their support. All right. Benjamin Franklin was also a pedophile and a serial killer, allegedly. The bones of over 30 children were found in his basement. Okay. He had numerous slaves, so you know who he was engaging in pederasty with and who he was killing. All this is alleged. Everything I'm saying is alleged, okay? But Benjamin Franklin is also the same person who stated that the American Revolution was not over tea tax and stamp tax and all that other nonsense. The U.S. has something called the colonial script. The colonial script. That was a form of money that they were able to use that stabilized their economy because it actually was backed by the appropriate amount of gold and silver. What happened in the 1760s was that the Bank of England made the colonies no longer be able to print their own script. The Bank of England stated that they're going to issue they were going to make the U.S. colonies buy bonds. All right. A bond is just a promise to pay. The bond would act as collateral to the money that would be issued to the U.S. colonies by the Bank of England that the U.S. colonies would have to pay back with interest. All right. So that threw the economy of the colonies into a tailspin. That's what caused the rebellion. And that's why the so-called founding fathers, who are all Masons, George Washington and Jefferson and Franklin, all those guys, they initiated what was called the Boston Tea Party, where they dressed up as quote unquote Native Americans, i.e. Negroes, so-called black people, because these so-called Native Americans, the actual Native Americans, were Negroes. All right. They were not the Mongoloids that they put on television today. All right. So they basically got dressed up in blackface and threw tea into the Boston Harbor, which caused the British government to have troops stationed there, which caused the colonists to turn against the British government. All right. So that's what's known as the Hegelian dialectic. All right. Stage some type of fake event, what you call today a false flag, in order to get a required result. But let's continue on with this.
That's a pretty exciting.
That's a nice thing to have arrive.
And this document. This isn't the original, is it?
This is the original.
This is the
Printed
original?
in the spring of 1775.
An enlistment form for recruits to an uprising. And enlist ourselves as soldiers in the Massachusetts Service for the Preservation of the Liberties of America. This is the beginning of the Army.
This is it.
The carvings on a soldier's powder horn show the stakes were high. Kill or be killed.
And
Liberty or death. The museum will also feature the faces of the revolution. Pictures taken of Revolutionary War veterans during the earliest days of photography. Some of these former soldiers were more than 100 years old when they posed for these pictures.
None of those men look 100 years old, so they probably just claiming it. But you know, it is what it is. Look at this guy here, Jabez Ellis. Says he was born in 1765. All right, like I said, he's not 100 years old. So unless he was maybe a page in the military when the war was being fought, he might have been 8 years old, 7, 8, maybe 9 years old. What was he, running errands? Like I said, this man does not look 100 years old. He was not 100 years old. Let me get a look at the previous guys.
Is this the Revolutionary War veterans during the early...
This guy's 1761. All right, so maybe he was 13 years old or so.
earliest days of photography. Some of these form
1768. All right, this guy was 5, 6 years old. He was not fighting in the so-called Continental War. So again, this looks like some fake news, unless they're giving these guys credit for running errands.
former soldiers were more than 100 years old.
All right, he said they were over 100 years old. We haven't come across a guy who was 100 years old yet. None of these guys were 100 years old.
When they posed for these pictures. Is this the prize of the collection, really?
And they didn't show any so-called black men. There were numerous black men who fought in the war on both sides, right? The majority of them were fighting on the side of the British. You know why? Because the so-called blacks were still had a prominent position in Britain at the time. All right?
Really?
I think it would be hard to top this one, that's for sure.
Many of the so-called loyalists were so-called black men, what they call redcoats.
The 20-foot piece of canvas was General Washington's home during the war. This is his actual tent.
This is it. This is the roof under which he spent at least half of the American Revolution. Personally, I think it's chilling to think about the emotions that were felt underneath this canvas.
Now, out of storage, the tent is up again.
See, the so-called Caucasian, they love all these little silly reenactments. But anyway, Washington was a so-called Mason, and he was the one who put Alexander Hamilton, who's famous now for being the sole focus of a play on Broadway called Hamilton. But anyway, Alexander Hamilton was a man of so-called mixed race. They don't talk about that now. He had a Caucasian father, a Caucasian Jewish father, and a mother who was, I believe, half so-called black and half something else. But he was ashamed of his parentage. They've totally whitewashed his image to make him look more Caucasian. But anyway, point being is this. He was an agent of the so-called Rothschilds. That's why he pushed so hard for what's known as the first American or first U.S. national bank. All right, which was chartered in 1791. Thomas Jefferson was against it because, once again, the bank, the national bank, is what they use to control the money. All right, going back all the way to what I said earlier about the colonial script. They had the colonial script, and the Bank of England did not want that because they could not control the economy of the colonies if they were issuing their own money. So they actually loaned the colonies money on interest. That's what started the so-called American Revolution. All right. Anyway, this guy, Alexander Hamilton, he was an agent of the Rothschilds. His job was to push for a first national bank. He got it done. He was the head of the first national bank. Eventually, he pissed off a guy named Aaron Burr, who was vice president, I believe, under John Adams or John Quincy Adams, one of the two. And he ended up getting killed. All right. So the charter of the First National Bank elapsed in 1811. It was a 20-year charter. The Bank of England wanted a second national bank. That's why you have what's called the War of 1812. All right. They needed America to have to borrow money. It's what's called balance of power politics. All right. I think I might have spoke on this a little before. In balance of power politics, that's what bankers use to make sure that the governments that they lend money to have to pay them back. Right. Keep in mind, if you're somebody who's a homeowner, when you go out and you purchase a home, you purchase a mortgage. If you don't pay back your mortgage, you have something called a foreclosure because your house is used as collateral. right? The bank says either you pay me or I take your house. That's basically what that means. So you don't pay your mortgage, they come and they take your house. Now, in the case of governments, a government can repudiate their loan. Or repudiation basically means that I'm going to just tell you I'm just not going to pay you back your money. All right. That's what a president will do, or a king, or somebody who is in charge of a country or kingdom. So what the banks will do is they will build up two countries and they'll say, look, you either pay us back the money that we lent you, or we're going to sick this other country on you, because we'll tell this other country that if you don't go and you attack this country for us, we're going to run up the interest rates on the loan that we gave you, and we're going to throw off your economy. All right. That's how wars get started. All right. They want these countries to pay them back their loans. OK. That's why it's so important for them to have central banks in every country. They have to have a central bank. That's how they control the money. All right. So that's why they came in the War of 1812. They needed to have that national bank rechartered. And they were able to get the recharter. And when that charter was about to run out on the second national bank in 1832, they ran into a problem. The president, Andrew Jackson, he was aware of what the national banks were doing. So what he did was he basically said that we're going to throw off this national bank. We don't want it anymore. At that time, it was led by the president of the national bank at that time was led by another pawn named Nicholas Biddle. All right. And what Nicholas Biddle did, he said, OK, no problem. So he totally threw off the economy of the United States of America by putting all type of exorbitant charges on the loans, because America was able to pay off all of its debt before then. See, people don't understand. This is the reason why America is $20 trillion in debt. When you ask one of these idiots, how come America is in debt? They say, well, because of the cost of wars. Wars don't cost in the trillions. All right. That's how much is owed to the national banks, to the international bankers. Pardon me. All right. So in the 1800s, they were paying off all their loans because the money was backed by gold and silver. All right. When they got rid of the gold and silver back in the money, in 1933, they got rid of the gold. In 1965, the silver. That's the reason why America now owes almost $20 trillion in debt. All right. They were actually able to pay off the debt from the Revolutionary War and from that War of 1812. All right. Now, Andrew Jackson, he did not want the second national bank to come back, so they tried to kill him. The person that they sent against him, I can't remember his name. His last name was Lawrence. I can't remember the first name. Was it Bill Lawrence, Jacob Lawrence, one of the two? His guns jammed when he tried to shoot, or misfired when he tried to shoot at Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson knew that it was the bankers that were coming to try to kill him. All right. But anyway, the charter for the second bank elapsed, and they didn't have another chance until the 1860s. That's where you have what's known as the Civil War. That's why I said the Civil War was started because the international bankers wanted to establish a national bank in America. All right. Everything goes back to to creating a bank. All the stuff that you read about and you see on TV is nonsense.
This time, not on the fields of Valley Forge, but behind a layer of thick protective glass. Washington's victories led to the birth of a nation.
To be an American is to not be somebody, but to believe in something. And the things we believe in came out of that revolution.
No, to be an American is basically be somebody who loves to be lied to. So-called Americans, they love to be lied to. They love to be told that they're the good guys. Oh, we know we're going across seas to go liberate this country and that country. They love that type of narrative.
The story is written in this collection. Artifacts of an act of defiance that would literally change the world.
Which is the first company.
And the museum opens on April 19th. That's the 242nd anniversary of the battles of Lexington and Concord, the first confrontations of the Revolutionary War. So far, more than 30,000 tickets have been sold to the museum. Very exciting this is finally happening.
Two things I didn't realize. One is muskets are gigantic.
Yes, and heavy.
Very, very big.
Look at this airhead.
Two things I didn't realize. Muskets are gigantic.
big,
Yeah.
and George Washington's tent is so well preserved
Yeah.
and looks almost whimsical, like
Yes.
a circus tent when put up.
I know, not what I expected at all.
At all on the field of battle.
What you think was gonna be out there, bro? A 3-bedroom apartment?
But
Stupid ass.
amazing that they have all that those
You
artifacts
can learn
there.
at the museum, the American
Get a
Revolution.
ticket. Staying afloat in one of the world's most
But anyway, that's the point. I saw this little feature on the American Revolution, and I said, you know, let me do this little video. But like I said, they didn't mention anything about these so-called black soldiers who fought in the American Revolution. I didn't think that they would. I'll probably do a video about that later on, maybe for Veterans Day or something like that. I'll do a video about the so-called black man as a soldier or leader in battle, whatever. But, you know, we'll see. But yeah, man, every time you see these stories, they all are about the same thing. All right. It's all about the control of money and or natural resources. All right. Peace.